You think light just travels. Straight lines from point A to point B. You imagine it's simple, predictable, harmless. You think you understand it, that it obeys the rules you learned in school, that it behaves like tiny bullets or little waves in water. You think it's fast, constant, reliable. You trust it more than anything else in your universe. But this is wrong, completely wrong. Light doesn't move the way you imagine, not really, not even close. It bends, it folds. It disappears and reappears. It does things you didn't even know were possible, things that should be impossible. You're about to see that the light you think you know is nothing like the light that actually exists. You think light moves like a tiny arrow shot from a bow. Straight, simple, predictable. You've seen it in diagrams, in classrooms, in textbooks with perfect lines stretching across a page. You trust these lines. You trust them because they make sense. They fit your intuition. But this is wrong, completely wrong. Light doesn't move in a single straight line. Not really, not even when it seems to. Think of a beam from a flashlight. You imagine it travels uninterrupted, carving a path through the darkness. You imagine each photon marching forward, one after another, like soldiers in formation. But the world does not work this way. The light you see is an end result of countless possibilities, countless paths, most of them invisible, most of them unthinkable. Even the simplest phenomena betray this illusion. Shine a light through a narrow slit, what do you see? A pattern of bands alternating bright and dark. If light were a straight arrow, you'd see one single solid line on the wall, one mark where it hits. But instead, you see evidence that it's exploring space in a way no arrow could. It spreads, it bends, it interferes with itself. And yet, we keep teaching it as a straight line. We keep imagining light as obedient, predictable, tame, because it looks like that, because our eyes are lazy interpreters of a chaotic truth. You think you see the path, but you only see the shadow of it. The reality is far more complex. Richard Feynman made this explicit. He said, the way it really moves is nothing like what you imagine. Light doesn't pick a single trajectory. It doesn't care about your arrow. It explores every possible route at once. Every twist, every turn, every path that seems ridiculous to your mind is considered. And somehow, out of this dizzying chaos, what you perceive as a straight line emerges. Not because the light obeys a simple rule, but because all the other possibilities cancel themselves out. You feel the discomfort now. That image of a beam traveling obediently from your lamp to the wall, that certainty you've held for years, it is a lie. You have been relying on an illusion so fundamental, so subtle, that you didn't even notice it. Your intuition, which has guided you through life, fails here. This is just the beginning. If light can betray you this easily, if something so simple, so familiar, can behave in ways your mind refuses to accept, what else have you been wrong about? You think light is fast, incredibly fast, the fastest thing in the universe. You imagine it racing across space at a fixed, unchanging speed. That 299,792,458 meters per second is a sacred number etched into your mind as absolute. You trust it, you rely on it. But this is wrong, completely wrong. Speed, the way you imagine it, only makes sense if the universe behaves like your intuition says it should. If you drop a ball, it falls at a predictable rate. If you throw an arrow, it arcs smoothly through space. But light is not a ball. Light is not an arrow. And the universe it moves through is not a neutral backdrop. You imagine light moving through nothing, pure empty space. But even nothing has structure. Space itself can stretch, bend, ripple. And light is bound to that structure. You think it always moves at the same speed because the math says so. But the math is subtle. It doesn't say what you think it says. It doesn't guarantee that the speed of light is an intuitive, everyday constant. The number is fixed locally in a vacuum, yes, but the context matters. The paths it explores, the materials it passes through, the gravitational wells it skirts, these all change the story. Step into a thought experiment. Imagine a beam skimming near a massive star. You expect it to travel straight, constant, unwavering. But it doesn't. Gravity bends it. Space stretches it. Its path elongates. Its effective speed changes in ways your intuition cannot grasp. And you have no way of observing all of this directly. Your eyes cannot measure the dance of light in curved space-time. Even in empty space, light doesn't travel like a commuter on a highway. Quantum rules dictate that its speed is an emergent property of countless possibilities. Each photon or each probability wave explores paths that stretch and compress in ways you cannot see. What you measure as speed is just the final, averaged out result of all these chaotic journeys. You feel that subtle unease. That certainty about speed, the one fact you never question, starts to slip. The number is real, yes, but the intuition behind it, false. It is another layer of the straight line lie. Speed is not a simple concept here. It is a shadow cast by something far stranger, far more subtle than you imagined. And now, having doubted the straight path, having doubted the sacred speed, you're ready to question something even deeper, the path itself, the very journey that light takes. You think light takes one path, one simple, obvious trajectory from here to there. You picture it like a tiny traveler picking a road, walking along, arriving at the destination. Straight, certain, singular, but this is wrong, completely wrong. Feynman insisted that this intuition, this comforting idea of a single path, is useless. Light doesn't choose one route. It tries them all, every route, every conceivable route, even the routes that seem absurd, impossible, or ridiculously long. The paths that, in your mind, could never happen. Light considers them all simultaneously. Imagine a photon traveling from a lamp to a wall. You think it moves directly, the shortest path, no deviation, but in reality, it explores paths that curve, paths that loop, paths that zigzag in ways you would to even sketch on paper. Each path has a weight, a kind of influence. Some paths add together, others cancel out. The straight, obvious line you see isn't. Chosen it is what survives after a universe of paths interferes with itself. It is like imagining a mountain stream. You drop a leaf in the water and expect it to float downstream in one predictable line. But the stream splits, curves, swirls, collides with rocks. Only at the end do you see where the leaf emerges. The leaf did. Travel a single, clean line. It explored a web of possibilities. Light behaves in a similar but far stranger way. The paths it explores are invisible, incomprehensible. And yet, from all of them, the straight line you expect emerges, but only as an illusion. Now, consider a double-slit experiment. You shine light through two tiny slits. You expect two bright lines on the screen, one for each slit. But no, you get a pattern of stripes, bright and dark. Why? Because the light is just taking the path through one slit or the other. It's taking every path through both slits, interfering with itself. Paths that never were dominate the outcome as much as paths that actually were. Your intuition fails utterly here and here as the unsettling part. This isn't just a quirk of tiny scales. It is the fundamental way light behaves. Every photon, every quantum, every wave of light is exploring an infinity of potential routes, folding time and space into possibilities that your mind cannot grasp. The world you see, the straight beam, the pinpoint dot, the steady illumination, is nothing more than the result of improbable cancellations and reinforcements. You begin to realize something uncomfortable. The universe does care about the straight line. It does care about your logic. What you thought was simple motion, obvious cause, and predictable travel is an emergent illusion from an impossible tangle of alternatives. And if you can trust the path, if the journey itself is a web of possibilities, then you must start asking, what does it even mean for something to move at all? You think light is continuous. You imagine it as a stream, unbroken and reliable. You turn on a lamp and the room fills instantly. You see it, you trust it, you take it for granted. But this is wrong, Completely wrong. Light does not move like water flowing through a pipe. It does not march steadily along a path. It disappears. It reappears. It vanishes from one place and materializes somewhere else, as if the universe is teasing your sense of reality. Consider diffraction. Light passes through a narrow gap, yet the shadow it casts spreads, bends, curls, interferes with itself. You expected a straight line. You expected continuity. Instead, the light behaves as if it does to know where it should be, or worse, as if it occupies many places at once. It is nowhere you expect, yet everywhere it needs to be to create the pattern you see. Feynman described this in terms of probabilities. Light does simply travel. It explores all routes, and each route has a chance to succeed. Most paths cancel out, vanish, fade into nothing. A few survive. These survivors reappear at the places you observe. The light you see is the sum of countless vanishing paths. What you dawn, see the infinite trails that fail is equally real, equally necessary. Think about an experiment with mirrors. A photon reflects, yes, but not like a ball bouncing predictably. As if the photon tries every possible reflection, every conceivable angle, every trajectory that could connect its start and finish. Most of these vanish. Some reappear. And the resulting reflection, you see the familiar glint off a surface, is the end result of a near invisible orchestration. Now, consider interference. Two beams of light meet. Sometimes they reinforce each other. Sometimes they cancel each other completely. The light seems to vanish entirely in some places. It disappears not gradually, not by slowing down, but completely. And yet in other locations it reappears brighter than you ever imagined it could be. The process is instantaneous, non-local, impossible by classical intuition. This vanishing and reappearing is not a trick. It is not a limitation of measurement. It is the reality of light itself. What you perceive as continuous, solid, obedient motion is an emergent effect, a shadow of a far more fluid, probabilistic, and paradoxical behavior. And here's the consequence you feel deep down, the very certainty of existence, the idea that things occupy space predictably, that motion is smooth and continuous is broken. Light, the most fundamental messenger of reality, defies your assumptions. It refuses the path you expect. It undermines the very notion of continuous travel. Every time you see light, what you witness is not a simple journey. It is a filtered illusion. It is the residue of infinite possibilities, of paths that vanish, of trajectories that never settle. The light you trust is the result of chaos rendered coherent. And if light can disappear and reappear, bending the rules of presence and absence, then the universe itself is stranger than your mind can comfortably hold. You think time is simple. You imagine a steady march, second by second, flowing uniformly for everyone everywhere. You imagine light obeys that march, traveling steadily from past to future, carrying information in a predictable causal line. But this is wrong, completely wrong. Light does not experience time the way you think. It does not care about before or after in the way your mind insists they exist. From the photon's perspective, if you could peer from its point of view, everything is instantaneous. The journey from one end of the universe to the other is, in some sense, meaningless. The concepts of duration, travel, and delay collapse into irrelevance. Even in your own frame, light bends your notion of time. Shine a flashlight past a massive star. You expect the beam to reach its destination a little later than if space were empty. And yet the path it takes, twisted by gravity, is not just longer, it is fundamentally altered. The when and the where of the photon are interdependent. Space and time fold together so that measuring one without the other is incomplete. You cannot separate light's position from its temporal context. Quantum mechanics deepens the unease. Light explores all possible paths, yes, but each path comes with a probability that is defined over time. Some paths are short, some are long, some loop backward in ways your mind refuses to follow. The photon doesn't choose a single time to arrive. It spreads over possibilities. The moment you observe it, you freeze one outcome. But until then, the timeline itself is smeared. Consider the double-slit experiment again. A photon can interfere with its own future self. The pattern on the screen is influenced by paths it could take, but never does in any classical sense. Cause and effect blur. What you assume as chronological order, the neat arrow of past to future, is no longer reliable. The photon has ignored it all along. Even your most sacred intuitions about simultaneity fail. Two events that seem simultaneous to you are not simultaneous for light traveling between them. Time dilates, bends, warps, all in ways that defy the comforting linearity of your mind. The rules of what are relative, context-dependent, probabilistic. And yet, you still see light arrive in what seems like a simple, straight, uninterrupted flash, but that flash is a construct. It is the residue of countless journeys, of times that stretch, compress, and even overlap. The arrow of time you trust is a fragile, emergent illusion built on top of chaos. Now you feel it, the foundation of reality, the idea that things happen in order, that events unfold predictably, is under threat. Light, the very agent that reveals the world to you, ignores your rules. It shows you that time is not a river, not a line, not a guarantee. It is a malleable, context-dependent fabric stitched together from the sum of infinite possibilities. If you cannot trust the path, cannot trust the speed, and now cannot trust the sequence of events itself, then reality, the world you feel you know, is far stranger than your mind allows. You think you see reality as it is. You trust your eyes. You trust your perception. A lamp illuminates a desk, and you assume the light simply traveled, obeying the rules you understand. Straight line, constant speed, continuous presence. You think the world you see is the world that exists. But this is wrong. Completely wrong. What you perceive is not the universe. It is a filtered, edited construction. Light doesn't obey your intuition, and your senses depend on that light. Every photon that reaches your retina has already navigated a complex web of paths, probabilities, and interactions. The image in your mind is not a direct copy of reality. It is a residue, an echo, a consequence of light's chaotic journey. Look closer. Shadows, reflections, refractions, interference patterns, all of these betray your assumptions. Light has bent, vanished, reappeared, explored paths that never existed, and manipulated time itself. Yet, somehow, your brain interprets the result as a coherent picture. Your mind stitches together continuity, straight lines, and stability out of something profoundly discontinuous and counterintuitive. Think about vision itself. Every color, every contour, every depth cue relies on light behaving in ways you cannot witness directly. Light carries the universe to you, but it does so according to rules that ignore your intuition. The world you experience, the solidity of objects, the certainty of location, the predictability of events, is a projection. It is a simplification of impossibly complex phenomena, curated by both the laws of physics and the limitations of perception. Even time, the arrow you cling to, is part of this construction. Light brings you events in a way that your brain interprets as order. The universe itself does not guarantee this order. It is emergent. The arrival of photons at your eyes encodes probabilities, interferences, and paradoxes. Your brain smooths them into something coherent, comforting, and seemingly real. This realization is unsettling. The straight line, the constant speed, the continuous journey, they were never real. They were conveniences, illusions, scaffolding for your perception. Reality does not travel in lines. Reality does not unfold predictably. Reality is a vast, strange, probabilistic symphony, and what you see is the melody you can comprehend. If light, the very medium through which the universe communicates, is this strange, then every observation you make, every certainty you cling to, is provisional. The world you experience is a shadow cast by the true underlying chaos. What you trust as solid, continuous, and reliable is only a construction. emerging from impossible complexity. And now, having seen through the path, the speed, the presence, the timing of light, you begin to understand reality itself is stranger than your senses allow. You have been relying on shadows, and yet these shadows are enough to build the illusion of a coherent world. This is the edge of comprehension. You cannot fully visualize it. You cannot hold it comfortably. And that is precisely what makes it real. You think you understand light. You think you know the rules, the patterns, the behavior. But all along, your certainty has been a fragile construct. Every beam, every glow, every glimmer that reaches your eyes has traveled a path you cannot imagine, obeyed laws you cannot intuit, and unfolded across time in ways that defy comprehension. Now step back. Imagine the full picture. Light explores all possibilities, weaving through an infinity of paths, vanishing and reappearing, folding time and space, bending around mass, interfering with itself. Every photon is a messenger from the edges of your understanding, a fragment of a universe that refuses simplicity. Feynman insisted we cannot capture this in simple words or straight lines. We cannot reduce it to diagrams, formulas, or casual analogies. Light is not a particle, not a wave, not what you expect, not what you can predict. It exists in the tension between all possibilities, in the ghostly interference of paths that never were, in the delicate cancellations that render reality visible to you. And yet, out of this impossible chaos, the world emerges. The light you see, the objects you touch, the colors you admire, all of it is the product of infinite improbabilities aligning just so. Your perception, your experience, your here and now are fragile windows into this strange orchestration. Reality does not exist as you imagine. It only appears to exist because light, against all odds, orchestrates itself into coherence for your mind to perceive. This realization is not comforting, it is disorienting, it is destabilizing, but it is also awe-inspiring. The universe does not need to conform to intuition. It does not care about your expectations. And yet, from the raw, chaotic possibilities, a world emerges that is coherent enough for life, thought, and consciousness. That coherence is fleeting, fragile, and miraculous. Now, consider what it means to witness light. Every flash, every reflection, every glint is not a trivial event. It is a manifestation of deep, intricate laws that you cannot fully grasp. What you see as solid, as reliable, as real is the residue of a process so complex that it exceeds your imagination. Light is the intermediary between chaos and comprehension. It is the brushstroke by which the universe paints reality for you. And here, at this edge, there is no formula to simplify, no path to predict, no speed to trust, only wonder. Only the recognition that the universe is profoundly strange, that the rules you hold dear are emergent, provisional, and delicate, that the world you see is constructed, filtered, and orchestrated from the impossible. You feel it now, a mixture of unease and awe, a recognition that the universe is far richer, stranger, and more beautiful than your intuition could ever allow. That light, the simplest, most familiar thing, is the doorway to this realization. You cannot fully understand it. You cannot fully control it. You can only witness it, and in witnessing, be transformed. Because reality, filtered through the strange, impossible behavior of light, is a masterpiece of the unknowable.